Well, hello and welcome to Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast with your hosts. I am Stevie Mans.
And I am Aki Burmese. And let me tell you something. It's highly illogical how much Star Trek we've had of late.
Good segue. It is highly illogical.
Thank you. I'm not upset about it, but it does mean there's a lot to talk about. I don't know why they put out 2 episodes this past week, but they did. This first one, this just dropped on a Sunday, Stevie. On a Sunday.
I know. No one was expecting it. Do we think it was writer strike related?
I don't know if it was writer strike related or because, spoiler alert, the next episode is pretty dark and they thought it would be nice to leaven it with something happy. But I guess we'll find out on Sunday if they hit us with the next app. Do you already know?
No, I don't know.
Oh.
But I do know they've released I do know they've announced the date of Star Trek's. I do know they've announced Star Trek Lower Decks coming out on September 7th.
Oh, yeah. We know this.
So I wonder why, like the time, I wonder if they screwed up the timing and needed to adjust it for some particular reason. I wonder if it had something to do with, there's a part of me that does think it has something to do with the writer's strike.
That's probably the Occam's razor explanation. It makes the most sense. It is logical.
I think it must have something to do with the promotion and what they're able to do with the actors or not.
Right. Because they're not able to do anything with the actors.
Correct. But even like the ready room. I don't know if they can do the ready room.
Well, those are all recorded, presumably. Oh, maybe they're not. Touche.
Oh, this is it. I don't know how far in advance they are recorded.
But the actors, only the directors would be able to talk about the shows because the actors and writers would not be allowed to talk about shows. I don't know.
But then what would Will Wheaton... I don't know if he would even be able to host.
No, he's been on the picket line. He did I saw a thing on him with I'm gonna call her Beverly Crusher.
Kate McFadden.
Yes.
All I can think. Interesting.
Yeah.
And the points that he made about that, and we can talk about that later. Right. But it was really interesting about how back in the 90s, pre-streaming, like they all made a lot of money on residuals. Series were also longer, like 20, 25 episodes per season. There was a lot more money for actors, and consequently, the TNG actors are have done fairly well. But consequently, I think Michelle Hurd, I saw her on the picket line, and she's like, we might, if you're even a series regular, you might make $8,000 an episode, and you might not even qualify for your health insurance, and be on a huge show.
Exactly,
which I thought was crazy. Anyway, we're not here. It's sort of.
We're not here to talk that, but it's something unspoken in the ether. We don't understand what's going on. Anyway, we should. This is the worst time to be talking about other stuff because we got to talk about all this Star Trek.
We do.
Well, let's do it. Yeah. Hey, you know what? Forgot to tell you what the star date is. Stardate 427729.4. We're talking about episode 7 of season 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, entitled Those Old Scientists. Well, this is the episode we've all been waiting for. TOS. Because this is the episode of as the text I got from Stevie Sunday afternoon. It's the crossover episode. It's out now. This is Lower Decks meets Strange New Worlds. I think it's great, and let's just run it down. It's crazy.
It's time to run it down. Can you run it down for me? Tell me what just happened. Can you run it down for me?
Yes, I can. We begin in the cartoon version of the world of Cerritos, and Boimler is doing his personal log because they're headed to the planet of Krolmuth B to check on this portal that's been on this planet that was discovered by, who was it discovered by? The point is, they're checking in on this portal, and it's the portal's been inactive for years and years, centuries maybe, and they're just going to see that if the portal is fine. So It turns out that Mariner is in charge of the team that's beaming down to the planet, and the team is the team. So you got your Rutherford, you got your Tendi, you got your Boims, and they head down there. They're looking at this portal on this desolated planet. Tendi argues that the portal was actually discovered by an Orion spaceship, a science spaceship, which Boimler is, let's say, incredulous about. But Mariner cautions him that it's not polite to assume that all Orions are pirates, even 120 years ago. Rutherford is doing some scans, and he detects traces of horonium. Horonium. Have we heard this element before, or was this made up?
Don't recall. I think it does come up when she says it's not been discovered for centuries. I think it's totally it may appear in my Easter eggs.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, I was like horonium. Anyway, it's an element, yes, that has not been seen or recorded for centuries. And Boimler points out offhand that all the old NX class shuttles used horonium for their hulls, the ships and shuttles. So Boimler gets up there. He starts to do his Spock impersonation. It's terrible. They decided to take a hollow photo. As they take the photo, it activates the horonium, I guess. The portal opens and sucks Boimler back through. The rest of the crew is unable to stop him. The portal closes. Boimler flies through, lands on the ground to see that he is surveyed by Spock, La'an, and Una. He says they look very lifelike, and then he passes out. And Una says, reporting back to the ship, there may be a problem. Yes, and Boimler, live action. What's his name? Quaid. Jack? No. Yeah, Jack Quaid? No, I got it.
Correct. Jack Quaid, son of Morph. I was making it up. Son of Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan.
Oh, that explains his supple good looks. And
it does explain his good looks, but yet also his like quirky.
I was gonna say, and also his sort of quirky, funny physical comedy thing. Side note, this podcast could have been about rom-coms, but we decided to do Star Trek instead. It could still be. That's true. We got a writer strike coming up. Well, I finally managed to hunt down you can't find this at most places. Maybe I should admit this, but Meg Ryan's French Kiss with Kevin Kline, a mid-90s rom-com. And she's hilarious. She does so much physical comedy. She's so good. Anyway, that all tracks. I didn't know that about Jack Quaid, that he was of Meg Ryan, but now it tracks. Okay, so where were we? Yes. So now we're in the real world, air quotes. And the Enterprise had their own thing going on. They were on their way to colony on Setlec 2 to deliver these special grains and food supplies to the colonists there. And Una and Pike, they discovered they were stopping to take a look at this thing, and they discovered Boimler. So Una and Pike are looking at Boimler's communicator, and they say, oh, look, it's not only a badge, it's also a communicator, which is not what they have. And Pike is not super enthused because he's like, flipping open the communicator is the best part. They get to sickbay. They see Boimler there. He wakes up. Boimler is absolutely gobsmacked that everyone around him is like a superhero of the TOS era. He asks for the star date and realizes that he is, in fact, 120 years in the past. And Boimler is super into Pike, who turns out to be funnier than he thought. And he has a super weird reaction to Una, Jin Riley, which Una finds just comforting, but doesn't know why. And they can't ask because of the temporal timey-wimey stuff. La'an takes him to get situated and explains the temporal contamination rules. Number one. Oh, I said that. I inadvertently said that like Picard. Number one, whenever I make a list. Number one.
I feel like you said I feel like you said number one, not like Picard, but like Picard when he was a child in that transporter accident.
You got number it. That's number one. Number one, I'm a child. Number one, don't get involved in current events because you could change the future. Don't share future information because you could change the past. And number three, one that you made up herself, don't get attached. A throwback. I thought this was nice how they wove in the serious things. So La'an's episode where she goes back in time with Kirk and all that business, she's saying don't make any attachments because things can get pretty tricky. So we get a little bit of La'an, tied in, hooked into this temporal business. Boimler is waiting for things to get fixed. He's in the ready room, Pike's ready room, and sees Pike's saddle horse, which is a weird thing for Pike to have. And he touches it, and then he's like, it couldn't hurt to just get on this bad boy. And then he Rikers up into the saddle, which was very funny and also beautiful. And also Frakes directed this episode, did he not? So it's meta on top of meta.
Fun fact, that was improvised.
Of course it was.
Of course it was improvised.
Right.
In the ready room, if you are a fan of the ready room, as I know some of you out there may be, it was quite funny. Will Wheaton had Tony Newsom, Jack Quaid, and Riker / Jonathan Frakes on his sofa, and they talked about that moment. And Jack Quaid said, "Oh yeah, totally improvised." And they talked about the whole episode and the fact that like it was all a big swing, like moving animated characters into a live action was a big swing. And I think doing that in front of Jonathan Frakes and he said, yeah, that was a big swing, but you kind of had to.
Yeah. It's come on, this is Boimler on. Think of, if I went, this is that what the whole episode is about. It's like going back and seeing your heroes in the time that they were in. It was one of them. We'll chat about that. Okay, so he gets in there. He meets Uhura. He mentions that Mariner would freak out if Mariner met Uhura because Uhura is Mariner's favorite. And Uhura's like, look, I just need some space to work. And that's when Boimler gets called back to the planet. So they make their first attempt to send Boimler back to his original time. Spock and Mbenga are there taking readings. Boimler mentions dumb luck, and it causes Spock to laugh out loud, which worries Boimler extremely because he thinks perhaps he did something to Spock. But then they are called back because an unidentified ship is entering the system. They go back to the bridge. The Orion science vessel, the Devar. Ooh. Captained by Har Karas. I hope I'm saying that right, because there's a lot of language to remember for these two eps. And Boimler cautions Pike that, hey, these are peaceful people, and it's from my time. It's not polite to think of all Orions as pirates, so be cool. And so Pike steps back from his sort of like aggressive footing, and they have a brief conversation, and then things seem like they might be okay, but then the Orions beam the portal aboard their ship and take off at warp, and it's all Boimler's fault. Pike goes and admits to Una in private that maybe he made a mistake listening to Boimler, but that he was charmed by the fact that this young ensign was like idealizing him because it makes him feel like maybe his future is not as grim as he thinks it might be, which was an interesting concept. Boimler, meanwhile, is in the crew lounge. He's playing with a pad, and Ortegas and Chapel approach, and they tease him about contaminating the timeline and chronoton radiation. Whoa. Boimler lets slip about Pike's birthday, which apparently no one knew about, but of course he does because it's a holiday. And then it occurs to Ortegas to maybe they throw a surprise party for Pike on his birthday. That would be nice for the captain. At that point, Chapel has to go. Spock arrives at the doors, and as he sees Chapel, he smiles broadly at her. This gives Boimler more concern. He chases Chapel down the hall and into a turbolift, and he asks if he maybe did something to Spock, like maybe broke him because he made Spock laugh. And that's when Chapel reveals that Spock is going through a thing that has been happening since Boimler got here, before Boimler got here, and Boimler's relieved because he's like, oh, okay, so maybe the Spock that I know from history books will, he's like going through a thing, but he'll go back to his old serious Spocky Vulcan self, which sort of rains on Chapel's parade because their love is young, so young and foolish. And then Boimler excuses himself from the turbolift, realizing that he has ruined everyone's day, and he continues to muck up everything in Boimler fashion. The Enterprise crew is unable to track down the Orions, but Boimler from the future knows how they could track down the Orions, but they don't want to contaminate the past, the timeline. But then Boimler was like, maybe I could do it, and you guys just look away, and then we get a very cartoonish, very much from Lower Decks style of everyone looking the other way, and Boimler just covered in cables around the con, and they're able to chase down the Orions. They meet the Devar spaceship, and blah, 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 blah. I got lost. Oh my God. Oh, here we are. They meet the Devar spaceship, and they manage to do a trade for the portal for the grain, the special grain that they have in their hull, and they're able to get the portal back. They make a second attempt to send Boimler back to his timeline. This time is with Spock, Pike, and La'an. They have just enough Heronium to do one trip. They activate it. But before Boimler can go through, Mariner, seeing him, thinks she needs to rescue him. And so she jumps through. And then we get our second cartoon turned into live action person, Tawny Newsome, as Beckett Mariner, sleeves rolled up and everything. And Mariner, seeing all those famous people, asks immediately if she can see Uhura.
Fun fact. Those sleeves that are rolled up, they were never, the suit she's wearing, the uniform she's wearing, does not have full sleeves. They only made them 3/4 that they could just fold up very neatly.
There you go. It's a Mariner cut. A Mariner sleeve cut, which honestly, not a bad cut for a shirt.
No, it's pretty good.
If that's a thing.
I just love that.
Yes. So I thought it was great. Well, I loved all the attention to detail from their character. And I did see a clip of the Ready Room where they were razzing Quaid about him throwing a hissy fit about needing to have purple hair to play Boimler. But it did add a nice effect. Did give Boimler a nice purplish thing. So there's a round table where the command staff, Mariner, and Boimler are talking about options for what they can do. There's no Heronium, but maybe they can make some. Mariner suggests that they use a matter synthesizer and that Boimler helps Spock and that she can help Uhura with translation because she has some language credits from the Academy, even though she really doesn't have anything that can help Uhura. But it's a chance for them to hang out with their heroes. Also, Mariner is blown away by how hot young Spock is, which, hey, aren't we all? Una corners Mariner in a hallway, which I know technically is not a thing that you can do in a hallway that doesn't have corners, but don't worry about it. That's what I wrote. And she's asking about Boimler's strange behavior, and Mariner lets slip that Boimler has a poster of Una in his bunk, which Una misunderstands to be a prurient sort of thing. And so she says, don't tell me anything more. I don't want to know anything more. And she goes away. They work together. Mariner and Uhura are working together. Uhura is, as usual, trying to work nonstop. She's daunted by the historical legacy that Mariner and Boimler indicate for her. Mariner suggests that they take a break. And so they go down to the lounge, and Mariner makes Orion hurricanes for herself, Ortegas, and Uhura. But Uhura is still working surreptitiously until she is razzed by Ortegas. She finally gives them her pad. But then Ortegas foreshadows her time during the Federation Klingon War, which will become important in the next episode. But Ortegas sees what Uhura was working on and goes, oh, hey, I've seen this before. Someone tried to trade me an ancient Nausicaan Damjat board, and it had these letters on it, which causes Uhura to realize that it's an ancient, thousands of years old Nausicaan dialect. But when they translate it, they find out that it just says time travel device, which, hey, that's cool. Spock and Boimler are working, and Spock confronts Boimler about his conversation with Chapel. And he says, even though Boimler may have conceptions about Spock, it would be illogical for him to change his behavior because of what Boimler says, because that would contaminate the timeline. So he might as well continue on the path that he is on. And he just wanted to bring it up. Then they try to make Heronium, and the experiment explodes, and all is lost. Boimler, feeling sad, goes down to engineering to look at the warp core. He has a brief conversation with Pelia, and she inspires him, unwittingly perhaps, to take matters into his own hands. So he sneaks into the shuttle bay and onto a shuttle in order to contact the Orions using the shuttle's independent communications array, thinking he can trade something for the grains so that they can get the grains back for the colonists, so that at least if he's stuck there forever, he won't have caused the colony to fail. But Mariner is already there waiting for him, planning to help, and they think they can't get caught, but they are caught by La'an, and are told that Uhura was able to suppress their secret signals. So fortunately, that thing did not get out. Mariner and Boims are brought to Pike's quarters for a dressing down. And in the dressing down, it is brought up that Boimler dressed up as Pike for Halloween, which warms Pike's heart a little bit. And they have a conversation about things being ruined and so on and so forth. Pike also says, first thing you can do is stop telling people about my birthday and having this surprise birthday party thing happen, because he doesn't want to do it, because it'll be his first birthday where he's older than his dad was when his dad died. And so he's planning on spending it alone. But Boimler points out, hey, there are people on the ship that when you die are gonna miss you too, which obviously is something that's close to Pike's mind at all times, as he has 8 years left or something like that. Pike also sees how hard it is. He's like, what if I were sent back to Archer's Enterprise? And this gives Boimler an idea. Ha ha! The big idea. Boimler and Mariner talk to the command crew. Boimler apologizes for having ruined basically everyone's life, but then mentions a trip to the Starship History Museum that he and Mariner took. And they saw the Annex 01 and has grapplers, and La'an missed that she likes grapplers. And I did realize that La'an and Reed probably would get along. The old hulls were made out of heronium, as mentioned earlier in the episode, but those old ships are gone. However, the Annex 01, which is the first Enterprise, new ships have a piece of the old ship, and Mariner knows where the piece of the old Annex 01 is on this new Enterprise because she paid attention at the museum. Surprise, surprise. The piece is in the floor in engineering. This upsets Pelia, but they get the piece out of the floor. They manage to turn it into like a heronium ball, I guess, or whatever. And while they're doing that, the crew of the Enterprise are talking about the crew of the Annex 01, like the crew of the Cerritos talk about the crew of the Enterprise. Very, very sweet. And mentioning all those characters, which I'm sure you're going to mention in your Easter eggs. And in the transporter room, as they're headed down for their third attempt, Mariner clears up that what Boimler's poster is not something prurient, but rather a recruitment poster for Starfleet. And Boimler comes over and says, yeah, it was one of the major reasons that he joined. And even though they have flaunted the rules of temporal contamination, Una is relieved to hear this on a number of levels. And they get up on the pad to beam down, and Spock wishes young Boimler live long and prosper, which truly takes Boimler's breath away. He is, as they say, chuffed. They encounter Karas et al. On the surface of this planet, and apparently Karas did get that message that they sent out, but Pike is able to negotiate that they're going to send, he tells the story of truly who Mariner and Boimler are, and they're going to send them back in time, and as part of the deal, they can state that the Orion science vessel is the one that actually discovered the portal. Also, Boimler and Mariner mention that one of their crew members is an Orion, a mistress of the winter constellations that get Karas's attention. His crew member has the name Tendi, Estrella Tendi, that is the Tendi's Devana, that is Devana Tendi's great grandmother. And so, appeased by these multiple things, he will allow them to pass. They get the heronium in there, the portal activates. Mariner and Boimler caution Rutherford and Tendi not to save them now that the portal's open once again. They turn around, they say goodbye, and they go right through. Back on the Cerritos in Cartoon Land, Ransom finds Mariner and Boimler sort of relieved in their quarters, and he lets slip that Mariner fought to get that assignment, perhaps just so that Boimler could have a good time with his stupid portal. And the Enterprise got some real Orion Deloc from Karas in the deal, and so they're having actual Orion hurricanes, but it is having some psychotropic effects, which makes them feel like cartoons, perhaps. And here endeth episode 7 of season 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Those Old Scientists. Let's chat about that.
I say, darling, let's do a quick chat about that.
Yes, let's go.
Well.
If this wasn't a great episode.
It was a great episode. And I remember thinking, how on earth are they going to do that and have it work well? How will it not just look super cheesy?
Yeah.
It just seemed like, oh, let's have a crossover for the sake of it. And in actual fact, I think they used this episode, this crossover, to deal with some canon issues.
They did. Yeah, I thought it was very nicely done. Mm-hmm. I was going to say, I think it was one of the best. A crew goes back in time to another time that is of historical significance episodes of Star Trek. It was one I was like, I don't want this one to end. This could be a movie. it did make me. I love the. Well, there's a DS9 episode that you wouldn't know anything about, but where they go back to the Tribbles TOS era. There's this is just me off the top of it. Anyway, I thought this was one of the best ones, and it had a lot of heart, but also I loved we don't mention his name, but that movie about people longing for the past, and then when you get to the past, those people are longing for a past that they want, and I thought that was cool.
What movie?
Midnight in Paris, and I thought it was cool that the Enterprise crew, about whom Boimler and Mariner have been crazy about, when they get this little piece of the NX-01, they start to almost, they have like legendary feelings about the members of Pike's, oh my God, of Archer's original squad. I noticed no one mentioned water volleyball, or whatever the hell Archer was supposed to be into. I really hated that he was into that, but
that's something I didn't pick up on. Good job.
Really? Oh,
yeah. Like
it was a very sweet moment. I thought it was so great. Yeah, because they're all like, "God, we're trying to deal with our real life right now," but then they're moving a little piece, and like, "Did you know that this happened, that happened in NX-07?" And then they become super fans. And also, Pike mentions it too.
I think they mentioned Travis Mayweather and Hoshi Sato, and
they didn't mention Reed, which I thought really hurt my feelings. But they did. Yes. They did mention the grapplers. So.
They did mention the grapplers.
Yes, like you say, it was very well done, and I thought they did a nice job of incorporating like La'ana's arc this season. Sort of was mentioned, her loneliness and kind of weirdness with attachments. Uhura's arc this season of like working super hard and feeling like everyone's depending on her, but also trying to do so much and confront her own insecurities. And then also a little foreshadowing with Erica Ortegas being like, "Oh, when I was in the Klingon War, we got to sleep whenever we can because things were so rough." So it was a very nice bridge episode. So I also thought maybe they put this in here just to like, they didn't want to have 1 week of mostly shenanigans that didn't pay off sooner than later. So it like created a bridge episode, but I guess we'll find out. Anyway, I loved it.
They threw forward a little bit, or threw backwards, whichever you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And Erica Ortegas was a war hero. So obviously in this episode, looking ahead, spoiler, we know that we get Mbenga and Nurse Chapel's war story. Do we also think that we're going to get Ortegas?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, hey, if we keep doing episodes, we keep getting flashbacks. You know what I mean? This this Klingon Federation war that she who has been expunged from the record, but now lives in the 20 bajillionth century, 30th century, 32nd century. Michael started this war. Remember? Michael started the war. We're not on the. What's that?
I think we'll need to recap that.
We'll recap that we have to talk about it in the next episode. A return of my favorite phrase ever. Anyway. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Zed Phasers. As we go immediately now to the Easter egg desk with Stevie Man. Stevie, how are you today?
Augie, I am well. What a treat. What a plethora of Easter eggs. I don't think I've ever had as many Easter eggs in one episode before. So, Trek trope, time travel.
Oh, sorry. I just
time
thought you're like a sportscaster. I'll stop now.
Yeah, I don't really know what genre I'm going for here. Is it weather? Is it sports? Is it
you're holding it down.
Thank you so much. Well, okay. So the second Enterprise, technically, Boimler mentions that the crew of the first. When Boimler mentions the crew of the Enterprise, he corrects himself and says, "Oh, I mean the second Enterprise, technically," referencing the fact that the NX-01 Enterprise was retconned as the original Enterprise in 2001 with the prequel series Enterprise. And this quick joke actually becomes a big plot point later, as we discussed.
Yes.
Those old scientists, the titular point, Boimler. This is terrible. I'm so sorry.
You absolute child. Tit.
Tits McGee.
Okay, don't start that.
Boimler refers to the classic Trek era as Those old scientists obviously having a little joke with the fact that the time period is called TOS, standing for the original series. This was first referenced in the Lower Deck Season 1 finale, No Small Parts, when Ransom called the time of Kirk the TOS era, telling Captain Freeman that it stood for those old scientists. This is why at the end of the episode, Mariner points out to Boimler that he got that from Ransom. So that was a little fun, little throwback between to Lower Decks, which is rather fun.
Yes.
Now, one little line that I really enjoyed was numero una.
Numero una. So goofy.
Numero una. Obviously, nobody calls her that, but it's just a little mashup of her designation and her name Una. But also, the fact that perhaps it's a female version of Uno. And she's
yes. Well, it was the 60s and they thought they were being clever and they were being slightly less than clever, but we've retconned it into something clever.
Yes. Remember me. As Boimler gets sucked back into the portal, this is what he's doing, referencing the TNG episode of the same name in which Dr. Crusher gets sucked back into a vortex in a very similar way. Boimler is suggesting it would seem that he doesn't want to get stuck in a reality in which he doesn't exist. Lower Decks has long established that episode titles for Trek stories often exist in universe as well. Various logs and famous missions often carry the same name in canon as they do in our universe. So it's a nice little. They're just so good. Those writers, they deserve more money and residuals. Did you? I mean, I didn't actually notice this until I watched it back the second time because I think I just wasn't expecting it. The animated title sequence.
Oh yeah, I almost skipped it because I was like, "Oh, let's get on with the episode." And then I was like, "Wait a second, those lights look animated." It was so great.
It was so good, and it was almost like it was Lower Decksy, but it was also a throwback to TOS.
Yes,
way that series was animated. That's how I saw it first, and then I was like, "Oh, that looks a little bit more like Lower Decks."
Yes, yeah. It was a nice mashup. Oh yeah,
we had that alien hanging onto the nacelle, which is cool. I love that. Computer end program. Upon waking up on the Enterprise, Boimler initially suspects that he might be in a holodeck simulation, so he says, computer end program. We remember this from TNG when Picard and the gang did this all the time when they found themselves in strange surroundings, and shock horror, it never works.
Indeed.
Worf's honor. Instead of saying Scout's honor, Boimler says Worf's honor, which I thought that was really cute. But you have to wonder if a young Colonel Worf from an undiscovered country might be around at this point. Who knows? Is he, trying to pay homage or pay heed to the time travel rules. Ranks on the sleeves. Mariner notes that she doesn't love the Starfleet ranks on the sleeves, saying under her breath, I don't know about that. And Strange New Worlds uses a ranking system on the sleeve, similar to the original series and military operations, but not identical. And obviously, Mariner and Boimler come from the era where where ranks are indicated by pips.
Yeah.
So the Boimler walk, I loved that. That was one of my favorite things. The Boimler walk, the Riker over the chair, over the saddle. I thought that was really fun. And let's see. Boimler makes Spock more Spocky. Ditto Mariner and Uhura. Now, I thought this was interesting because, he strongly suggests that a more serious Spock is the one that Spock needs to become. And later, Mariner encourages Uhura to lighten up, which, as we know from TOS, is certainly the case.
Yeah.
Were Mariner and Boimler part of a predestination paradox? Did they just
timey-wimey?
Timey-wimey. You should really create that. Just saying.
A little timey-wimey Jimmy Buffett. Yeah.
Yeah, do it Jimmy Buffett style. That'd be funny.
Timey-wimey.
Holy Q! When frightened Boimler yells holy Q, Mariner scolds him for saying, don't yell Q, they haven't met him yet. They had a kind of Trelane thing going on. This references Q, of course, who doesn't mess with the Federation until the 24th century TNG era. Trelane, a very Q-like alien from the TOS episode, the Squire of Gothos, has long been considered a member of the Q continuum by various Trek comics and novels. Mariner's comment about Trelane feels like the first on-screen confirmation of that connection.
Or at least that there's some sort of binding between the Q continuum and Trelane. But who knows? Q got kicked out of the Q continuum.
Archer's Enterprise, indeed. Archer's Enterprise, the big denouement of this episode is all about Boimler's knowledge of the NX-01 Enterprise, which was in service a century before Pike's Enterprise, and saves the day.
Indeed.
So we mentioned Mayweather, Hoshi Sato. I thought this was really cute. Uhura said she wrote 3 papers on Hoshi at Starfleet Academy.
Yeah.
Sweet.
No mention of Porthos and his cheese addiction.
Indeed. Did you notice the poster? If you have to watch this again, and it's a split second, did you notice the poster at the beginning of the episode where Boimler is closing, I guess, a closet of his, and he has the Ad Astra Per Aspera poster. You see it at the end, but you also see it at the beginning, which I thought was really cute. Oh, and fun fact. Ransom mentions that Una is the hottest first officer in Starfleet history. And he's really the only person who can say this because the voice of Ransom is Jerry O'Connell, real life husband of Numero Una.
Oh, no, I got that. That was meta on top of meta on top of meta, which I appreciate. Yeah. Very confusing. But I loved it was very sweet. The husband and wife across the divide of franchises.
So good. Well, okay, that is it from me here in the Lower Decks / Strange New Worlds crossover. It's back to you in the studio.
All right, and we go immediately to quotable
moments.
The Cerritos has just entered the orbit of Krulthum B, home of the Krulthum B portal, one of my all-time favorite portals. We're taking routine portal readings and making sure the portal area is free of any portal problems. Boimler.
Portal.
Portal. I loved when Mariner says, when they're explaining the plan to Mariners, they're like, she knows where the Heronium is. She says, surprise. I paid attention while Boimler was distracted by the grappling hooks. And Spock says, it is surprising because normally she does not pay attention. And then goes right back to paying attention to her. It's very funny.
Indeed. Oh, by the way, see the Heronium thing. So Heronium is a relatively newly established substance. This episode retroactively says it dates back to centuries before 2381. Tendi uses the plural of centuries here, and Boimler says Starfleet used Oronium in the original NX class. So, there must be some sort of reason for that. So, anyway, that was your question earlier.
You need a MacGuffin, you got a MacGuffin.
What's a MacGuffin?
A MacGuffin, too hard to... It's a plot device that moves the plot forward, but has you have no real interaction with it or knowledge of what it is. But it comes from an old TV show.
Does it come from the A-Team?
Is it the A-Team? I don't think so. I think it's earlier than the A-Team. I forget what show it's from.
Okay, I can Google it.
Why do you think that?
I don't know. MacGuffin sounds.
You can Google. It's not important. You can Google it whenever you want to. But MacGuffin, it's like the suitcase of Pulp Fiction and anything that's sort of like, oh yeah, everyone's fighting over this thing and we don't know what the thing is really or really care. You Google it.
I think I have found it. I think it was Alfred Hitchcock popularized the term MacGuffin and the technique with his film, the 1935 film, The 39 Steps.
There you go.
In which the MacGuffin is some otherwise incidental military secrets. There is actually. Do you want this? It might be a Scottish name taken from a story about 2 men on a train. One man says, "What's that package up there in the baggage rack?" The other man answers, "Oh, that's a MacGuffin." The first one asks, "What's a MacGuffin?" Well, the other man says, "It's an apparatus for trapping lions in the Scottish Highlands." The first man says, "But there are no lions in the Scottish Highlands." And the other one answers, "Well, then that's no MacGuffin." So MacGuffin is actually nothing at all.
Incredible.
And then someone else in 1966 used the same story. So we're going with that.
Okay. It's Scottish.
Why?
Because I have to work on it every week. So yes, it was a MacGuffin and it was nicely used. Let's see. But Pike, when they see the new communicator, that's the new badge that's also communicator, and Pike says, but flipping it open is the best part. He's so sad. And it's true. It's true.
I miss my old Motorola.
Yeah. It's true. In our lifetime, we have experienced flip phones that were so fun to open, and now they are gone, already gone, and people are wearing wearable things. We skipped over there. We skipped over our own those old scientists era, and we did not give a damn. Final quote. At the end, Mariner and Boimler says, "You fought to get this mission? You did it just so I'd get to go?" And Boimler says, "No, Rance was just an idiot with a bad memory because he sleeps face down like a baby. Shut up." Okay.
I sleep down face like a baby.
You sleep face down like a baby?
Yeah, it's great.
It's
great.
It's terrible for your neck. I would feel terrible.
It is bad for my neck, but it used to feel very comfortable until I got back issues.
Yeah. Well, oh my God, you have back issues.
I know. I tell you, I threw my back out playing pickleball.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's better now. Thanks.
A sport you're not supposed to. Okay, great. Good for you. The one known for not having people throw their backs out. That's all I have. Unless you have something.
No, I think we covered it.
Let's go to next time.
Let's do that.
Next time on Set Phasers.
Hey, next time on Set Phasers, at some undisclosed future time, we'll be discussing episode 8 of season 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, entitled Under the Cloak of War. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We have episodes of all the new Star Trek that they're about all the episodes, so you should check out our episodes of those episodes anywhere that you get your podcasts.
What he said. Well, that's it from us. We'll be back very, very shortly with another episode of Star Trek with another episode of Set Phasers. There was some weird noise outside.
It's all right.
We'll be back shortly with another episode of Set Phasers. Till then, I am Stevie Manns.
And I don't sleep face down like a baby. And this has been Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek spot. I would have said it the other way, but you admitted it already. Star Trek podcast.
Computer end program. Oh, fuck. Computer end program.
Ah. Sometimes it doesn't work. And you're trapped where you are.